All right, welcome to another episode of the Wild Strength Podcast. Today, my guest is Shannon Buruchian, and her walk-up song is Stronger by Thunderstorm Artists. So we're going to kick it off with a few seconds of that. I might go as far as to say this is my favorite.
I'm honored.
Yeah.
It's a beat. I love a beat.
Yeah. Okay, that's definitely one that I'm saving for later, so I can go back and listen to the whole song. Because I like something that starts slow and then like slowly picks up, and that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from that.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it. Well, anyways, like I said, this is Shannon Buruchian. I actually was introduced to her through Dr. Matt Zanis, who I've had on here previously. And I believe he connected me with her because he thought that we would be really good on talking about maybe more of the mental health side of things. But we kind of spoke on the phone not long ago, and it sounds like maybe we have a lot more to talk about than just that. But anyways, I'll kind of let you introduce yourself, tell a little bit about what you do, maybe what led you to that, and then we'll get into things.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm so excited to be here. Shout out to Matt for connecting us. And with Dr. Matt, I always forget Dr. Matt. But, I'm someone who, I'm a personal trainer. I'm a holistic health coach. My name is Shannon Buruchian. I'm so happy to be here. But, I'm someone who all my life I was taught to work hard for what I wanted. And so I found myself pushing through any type of pain or discomfort, grinding away towards my goals, no matter how exhausted I felt. And, on the outside, I was just writing an Instagram post about this. On the outside here, I was accomplishing all of these things. I was an elite athlete, a personal trainer, working with big brands in this long-term relationship. But internally, I was falling apart from the expectation of those around me. And everything shifted for me when I realized 2 years ago that the relationship that I was in was toxic and abusive and perpetuating this idea that I was never going to be enough. And since getting out of that abuse, I've been working to let go of expectations and adjust my wellness routine to learn how to slow down and listen to my body so that I can see what I'm truly capable of. And now I'm on this mission helping redefine self-care for women particularly, but I think this is a message for everyone because when we can learn how to listen to our body needs, what our body needs, and we see fitness as this vehicle for prioritizing ourselves, I believe that we can begin to understand and believe that we're enough.
Yeah, I love that. I can kind of relate to where I think, and I preach this to everyone, you kind of really have to go through something, I believe, something hard, something difficult. And I preach that like difficult looks different for everyone to really, I think, have an understanding and an appreciation, I think, for life itself, but also to go back and to help others. And like, I don't know, I think I get told often, why are you so helping? And why are you like, so, I don't know, you're so wise for your age or whatever way people say it. But I mean, unfortunately it's like you've been through things. And so you could go back and kind of similar goals that I have is just to share with people, like, you yourself are important. And I don't think a lot of people view themselves in that way. And this is women and men included. I know you said you work mostly with women. But like a lot of men are so afraid to talk about those things. Like we know it because women are more open about it. We're more likely to talk to our friends about it. But then we see with men, they're so afraid. There's just this stigma, right? Like we can't talk about our mental health. We can't talk about how we feel about ourselves. And so, yeah, I think that's something that, and even if they have been through things, they don't really take the time to process it.
Sure.
So I find that something that's always really hard for people in general, but yeah, for men more often than not.
Yeah, and I hope that it's interesting. I was just having a conversation with someone at the gym the other day. There was this, he likes to ride motorcycles, and there was this ride, I think called the Gentleman's Ride. I'm going to butcher this because I don't know anything about it, but it was all about bringing awareness to men's health and men's mental health in particular. And so I'm hoping that the conversation is starting to change. But it's conversations like this, it's podcasts like this that help to support that, which I'm excited about.
Yeah. And I my first couple of episodes, I like was really pushing like mental health. So I'm kind of excited to like have someone back on here where we're talking about that thing and is familiar with all of that. But I know when we kind of had talked on the phone last, you had mentioned, obviously you work a lot with women and in training, and then kind of tying all of that with mental health as well. We talked about like stress, how stress ties into those kinds of things. What I guess as far as like your client base goes, what kinds of things are you often seeing? Like what is maybe like the top one or two things that stick out that is really affecting people's ability to just, I think, be healthy overall, right? But more or less like to stick to their physical goals, to stick to their training, to stick to diets or anything like that.
It's a tough question to boil it down to two things. So
Right.
when I work with when I work with women, I specialize in sustainable weight loss and lifestyle transformations. So a lot of times when women are first coming to me, they're coming from this place of wanting to lose weight. And they've been in a position of working for so many years trying to lose weight, and they've done all the things, right? They've done the diet, the Weight Watchers, the Noom, the macro tracking, the calorie counting, et cetera, et cetera. And they've tried and they failed, and they've tried and they failed, and they've tried and they failed. And by the time they get to me, they're at this point where not only are they so confused because of so much of the misinformation in the industry, but their self-belief and their confidence that they can even do this is where they're down to nothing. And so I would say what excites me most, and I don't know if this necessarily answers your question, but we'll come back to it. What excites me most is when we can help women or individuals in particular. We can give them the tools of what actually will work from the science perspective. Like none of the fluff. I don't want the fluff. I don't need to know like the timed eating, all of it. Just like, how do I take care of myself and my health on a regular basis? And we cut through the confusion and we give them clarity. And then I help them do it with the accountability and the support and the tools, and my team helps them do it, et cetera. When they can start to see the results and rebuild the confidence, they get the buy-in, so to say, to continue to go. And so when we think about what the biggest barriers are, I would say first and foremost is there's such confusion in the industry that holds individuals back. There's so much misinformation. And then once we can take that off the table and we can start to build momentum and we lock in, I think of it like phase 1 versus phase 2. Phase 1 being, let's just get you the results. Let's build the habits. Let's build the routines. Let's learn how to fuel your body. Let's learn what to do in the gym. Let's get your sleep, etc. underway. Then it unlocks phase 2, which is where the mental health side comes in. Wow, how much better do I feel when I'm showing up for myself on a regular basis? How much stronger do I feel when I've had an exercise routine? Wow, this is how work enhances when I take time for myself on a regular basis. And so, one, I would say it's confusion, just in general. And then 2, it's the lack of awareness of, just like you mentioned, how stress is playing a role. Because we all can conceptualize that we're stressed. Like, stress is the name of the game. I'm stressed from work. I got these deadlines. I have this commute. My boss is yelling at me if I get another email. Things. But the metabolism is this giant stress barometer. And if we fail to address the fact that overeating is stress, undereating is stress, lack of sleep is stress, drinking too much caffeine is stress, working too late is stress, not taking a lunch break is stress, not eating breakfast is stress. That component of itself is not being talked about enough in the industry. And so can we think about how much easier it would be, and I apologize for going off on a tangent, but can we think about how much easier it would be if we're just getting enough sleep and we're getting some sunshine and we're tending to the other things that also impact your ability to feel well, all the puzzle pieces finally get glued together.
Yeah, I love that. And you said you went off on a tangent, but one that I am like passionate is not quite the word that I'm looking for, but I talk about all the time. I don't know if I told you, I'm working on my PhD and my research is in like stress physiology.
Wow.
And so there's just stress is stress at the end of the day, no matter what you're experiencing. But like you said, I don't think that people realize, I think most people think of stress as a significant event, or maybe like you have chronic stress that you just like maybe have something that's happened in the past that you haven't been able to get over. But people, like you said, not eating breakfast is a stress to the body. Not sleeping enough is a stress to the body. Physical training itself is a stress to the body. Like, and at the end of the day, our body, no matter what the stress is stress, right? Our body does not know we've starved ourselves. Our body does not know we just had a breakup. Like the similar reactions are happening at a deeper level inside of us when we experience stress. But it's the culminating effect of all of those where we start to see that downward spiral. And my kind of like where I do my research and like presentations and all of that is, how can we, I think people like to say mitigate stress, but I kind of prefer using the word optimize stress, because we're going to experience stress no matter what. So how can we optimize the stress that we're experiencing and use it to our advantage, or How can we maybe just like reduce it? Because like I said, we're experiencing it no matter what. And that looks like having our nutrition in check, just eating enough, eating the right things. That looks like training, being physically active, getting outside, moving our bodies. That looks like getting enough sleep. That looks like having a social group that we can hang out with, that we can talk to. Like, there's so many things that play into that I think are not, I think, I know people aren't talking about and people aren't thinking about. And yeah, that's something that I'm just like so incredibly interested in and could talk about for hours.
Yeah. I like the idea of optimizing it. I would also add building our resilience to it, because when we are getting the sleep and getting the steps and connecting with our community and implementing play in our life and incorporating things that bring us joy, when that stressful event, there's a book that I can't remember off the top of my head. It has something to do with a zebra. It's going to bug me, but I find it.
Zebras don't get ulcers or something like that.
Maybe something like that. But it talks all about like the stress and how we navigate our daily life, as most people are living in this constant state of stress. They don't know that they're in fight or flight. It's so normalized to them. And my goal with what we do is we flip the paradigm on its head, that rest and digest. If you were to think about how it feels on a regular basis, if you're just laying on the beach with the sun on your skin and your emails on do not disturb, you're just in this place of rest and digest, that should be our norm. And we can only access it when we're taking care of our physical, mental, and emotional well-being on a regular basis. Building the tools and the skills to build greater resilience to stress, so that when the event happens, the trauma, the breakup, the work deadline, whatever that looks like, and we go into fight or flight, we can come back to our baseline. That's the only way that this works long term. But if we're living in fight or flight, our adrenals are being taxed, burnout is high, mental health, challenges are on a rise. We have to start to see our lifestyle as, how can I cultivate a lifestyle that supports managing stress so that I can feel good? Because when I feel good, every other area of my life benefits.
Yeah, I would agree. Two things I want to touch on. One is play and joy, but I'm going to come back to that one because I think that's something that people don't talk about often. Kind of to keep on the same tangent for the moment being, I actually had and I talk about this all the time, but I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and kind of to your point of when and it's sad, but it happens to so many people, when we live in that fight or flight mode for so long, when we are high stress for so long, when we are so used to trauma or so used to negative things happening, like that begins to feel comfortable. Like that begins to become your safe place. And so then, like you had kind of mentioned a relationship, like if you've been in a traumatic relationship, or just through an experience, like you constantly maybe seek these like high output things that maybe aren't good for you, but that's where you feel safe and comfortable because that just becomes familiar. So then when you are in a safe place, when you do, and this is still something I kind of struggle with to this day, when you do feel, you slow down and you're like, I should be comfortable slowing. I'm on the beach, I'm relaxing, I have nothing to do, it's a weekend, and I'm like, I gotta do something. I gotta go do something. And that's so common these days because I think like, and this can maybe tie into like the joy and the play and stuff, and like just mindlessness of being playful and experiencing joy is, I think just so many people live in that fight or flight mode, and they constantly are seeking these like high adrenaline things or like these cortisol spikes or whatever, and they don't know how to relax. And I say that because I speak to it myself. Like I'm not good at relaxing. I'm getting better at it, but I can speak to it myself because I'm not good at just slowing down and being like, this is nice.
It's so fitting. I took a mental health week last week, which I have never done in the history of starting my business. Like I've taken a vacation, but I actually shut off the inboxes. Like the team is going to handle it. Do not disturb mode was on. And I was like, what do I do? I'm supposed to be relaxing. What do people do when they relax? I'm like, why is relaxing so hard?
Yeah.
So I get it. I'm right there with you. It's a giant work in progress. And even just to go back to the thing that you mentioned before, one issue I have with the wellness industry is we fail to acknowledge our humanness. And we can think, I'm going to start this program and I'm going to do it for 90 days straight. And let's just take the example of a breakup, right? Or it could be the loss of the job, the death of a family member, a work deadline, the kid your child gets sick, whatever that is. We have to change the narrative that it's okay to not be perfect. That stuff has to matter. But when we start on day one and we're like, all right, for the next 90 days, I'm going to work out every single day and I'm going to cook all my meals from scratch and I'm going to cut out sugar and I'm going to not drink coffee, or all of these insane expectations. What if we just normalize that there's going to be bumps, there's going to be setbacks? How do we have compassion through the process and understand that being a human also matters? Because this all or nothing approach hasn't worked and will continue to not work if we continue to try it.
I love that. We fail to recognize our humanness, and that's huge and so true, because I know it, like, men and women have this thought that we can't fail. We have to, and a lot of that is maybe dependent on how you're raised, but even society tells us that we can't fail and that we have to do things right every time, that we have to be perfect. So then when we do fail or we do mess something up, we begin to beat ourselves up, and then maybe we fail again. Yeah. And now we're even in this bigger hole and we fail again, and the hole just gets bigger and bigger, when that's okay. Like, especially if you're trying something new and you've never done it before, you're going to fail and fail and fail. And people either lean into that or they just don't ever do it again because they don't like failing. And they're just going to go back to what they're good at. They're going to go back to what they know. And yeah, I think that's where, like, maybe instead of thinking of it, and I'm curious maybe your thoughts on this, thinking of it as like being successful and transitioning the thought to, like, I don't know, my initial, like, not being, it can still be tied with successful because I know that's where a lot of people's minds want to go to, but maybe thinking of it more as like an experimentation, right? Mm-hmm. Like, here is something that I know maybe I'm not great at. It's maybe something I've never done. It's a new job. It's a new task. And, like, I'm just going to play, for lack of a better word, or experiment and see where this goes. And I oftentimes think that, like, that probably leads to success more than just being so hard on ourselves about figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell my clients, I'm like, I want you to fail. If you can't fail with me, you're not going to fail out in real life, you know? And I want it to be a safe space for them to fail. I always explain and set the stage that, so I grew up playing soccer. I grew up playing a lot of sports, but soccer was my main sport. And before we had competition season, we had preseason. And that was the time to work out the kinks. Show up to practice, you're probably a little bit out of shape because you haven't done your off-season, and you are getting back in shape, you're relearning new skills, you're learning how to gel with your team. It's messy, you're doing some scrimmages, it's not really working well, but with time and practice and mistakes and failure, the skills, you get better. Well, what if we started to treat this as a practice field? Because when you practice, when we think of the concept of practice, mistakes are encouraged. Health and fitness, because it's easy to understand, people can have this misconception that they should just be good at it. Well, I understand that I should eat some vegetables and I should go to the gym and work out. Okay, but if you didn't go to school for this, if this isn't your forte, if this doesn't come naturally for you, it's a skill. Well, if you're going to learn how to build a new skill, can you let yourself fail so that you can learn and practice and get better with time? And so if we can just start to shift the lens of a practice-focused mindset, is what I refer to it as, I think it gives us more permission that the failure doesn't mean anything about you. It's the failure is neutral. It's what we make the failure mean about us. But the challenge is, because I failed, I'll never be successful. It's not going to work for me. I'm incapable. You know, I'm fat, I'm lazy, I'm all the things. Then I give self-help cues that goes back to childhood, what we believe about ourselves, all the things. I can see that we have a fear of failure. I also think a lot of individuals have a fear of success. And it's this idea that, well, especially in the wellness space, and I'm going to use the weight loss example because it's what I predominantly see. We've gotten so comfortable, to tie back into what you said, of staying in the struggle, of staying addicted to stress, that struggling with our weight or falling off track or not showing up and making the excuses has become our norm. We're comfortable doing that. It's safe. But the moment that we actually lose the weight, we're held to a standard of, I've seen some success and now I'm responsible to maintain it. And if I suddenly regain the weight, others are going to see that I wasn't able to, and then I'm a failure in their eyes, and I'm a failure in my eyes. But if we take the practice lens and we say, okay, it's going to take time for you to lose X amount of pounds or build this skill or learn how to work out in the gym or reach, you know, the 3 pull-ups that you want to do or learn how to do a push-up, whatever it is, the goal is irrelevant. What if you also use that time to build the belief in yourself that you can do this? and you'll become the person in the process who can maintain it. But when we start a journey and we think about so far and into advance, we're running scenarios and having fears that they're not where we are right now.
Yeah. One of the things I always like to say is like fail hard and fail often. And like
Ooh,
when people like can lean into that mindset of, yeah, like do it. Like when you fail, freaking fail.
yeah.
And then like get up, do it
If you're
again.
gonna
Like,
go all in, I want you to feel really well.
yeah, exactly. Like fail hard and fail often. But I
Yeah.
really like kind of what you were saying. I think when people like, and I've read in the research, and maybe you read this and curious, maybe your experience with clients or whatever, is that like, yes, we want to preach goal setting and like you learn in school like SMART goals, which for those that are listening and aren't familiar with that, it's like specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, and timely goals. So like ones that are real. And I've even read research on like how those can be detrimental because not just specifically smart goals, but goals period. Like you said, we have something that is so long term that may even be like so far fetched, but we have now that's something that I really want to do. So I've latched my mind onto this goal, forgetting that I'm human, that I can make mistakes, or that I don't know, maybe my goal is in which my least favorite question, if especially if you're like an interview and someone's like, what's your 5-year plan? I don't know, like something could happen tomorrow that completely changes the trajectory of my life. Or like these small, I could get in a bad car wreck and I'm like immobile for a little bit and I can't plan for those things, right? And so I think that the longer term goals that people try to latch onto is often more detrimental than it is beneficial because, like I said, when we're human, like you had mentioned, and we have those, maybe it's not even a failure. Maybe it's something, like I said, that's outside of our control that happens in our life that changes the trajectory that we were on. And maybe that's even a better trajectory, but we're so latched onto this original goal that we had that this change or this shift seems like so crazy and we don't want to follow that. That ends up hurting us in the long run.
Sure, sure. I'm curious for you, what helped you make that switch? Because I think for each person it's a little bit different. For myself, I found myself switching from the outcome to the habit based. I can't control how quickly, whether it be my body changed or, clients I work with or business, like personal, professional. When I'm speaking with the women I work with, I always say you can't control how quickly your body loses weight. You can control the consistency at which you perform the actions, because that will yield that result.
Yeah.
When we can shift our focus to, okay, I'm just going to do the things on a regular basis because I can control that, I can trust to know that the results will happen. And then simultaneously, we're building the habit and the repetition, performing the behavior for it to become a habit so we can maintain it long term. What helped you make that shift to, it sounds like this place of having self-compassion and being okay failing? I don't know if you're someone who was always comfortable failing. I know I wasn't, but I'm curious.
Yeah, same. And that's a great question too. So two things come to mind. One, I used to be that person who was so hard set on goals and like what I wanted to do with my life, and I woke up every single day like this is a day in the right direction, and like I'm gonna reach this goal by this time and do this by this time. Like I definitely was that person, and then when life happens, like I kind of like I was saying, like something can happen to change the trajectory of your life that you didn't plan for and had no control for. Like that happened to me, and I was distraught. I was like, I had everything planned out. I knew what I was going to do. I knew in next year this is where I would be, and in 3 years this is where I would be and what I would be doing. And when something happens and you're like, and that like you have to be okay with it, right? And I had so much, honestly, like anxiety over that and so much stress around that. And I was in therapy for a long time, and not even just related to that, for a variety of other things. But one thing that my therapist said that I have like latched onto and stuck with to this day is it's a metaphor. So she says, imagine yourself, you're standing inside a hula hoop, and this hula hoop is going around in circles, and everything that is inside of this hula hoop is things that you can control, and then everything outside of this hula hoop are things that you cannot control. And the second we try to step outside of this hula hoop, we lose control of the hula hoop. But we stepped outside trying to control things that we can't control, so we lost control of the things that we had. And that like mind blown, like shifted my mindset from there on out. And I've always been very much a like process oriented person,
Sure.
but still kind of with the outcome in mind. And so I guess I've had to just lean more into a recognizing that I can't control everything. I don't have control over everything in my life. And B, like really leaning into being more process oriented, and even so much so that like, for example, I trained for a half marathon and I had like a date in mind. I had the race in mind, and just like travel was happening, work was happening, life was happening, and I wasn't going to be able to run it on the date that I had planned. So I just
Wow.
woke up one morning and ran my half marathon. And
I
I
love
ran
that.
it by myself, no race, no nothing, no sanctioned event, but was like, and I remember while I was running it, I was like, man, like I worked on the process. I
Yeah.
did it. I got as far as I could and did as much as I could with the resources that I had available. And here I am doing it. And that was like a really cool experience for me as well.
Yeah. Talk about dedication. Because I think it would be really easy for people to be like, I couldn't do it on this day, or the event got canceled because it's raining. But I think it's just a testament to who you are and the discipline and the grit and the resilience to say, like, hey, I set this goal for myself, regardless of the external circumstances. I'm going to follow through on it.
Yeah, it definitely, and maybe it still is like quote unquote outcome oriented.
Sure.
But it was definitely, like I said, one of those things where I was like, exactly. I set a goal for myself, and it was like I never posted about it really. I didn't, and maybe we could even talk about this too. I think sometimes people say to like talk about your goals, to verbalize them to other people so that maybe you're more likely to stick to them. But
Yeah.
I quite honestly, when I tell other people, maybe I told like a couple of friends, but if I would have publicized that, I don't actually think that I would have stuck to it as much as I did.
I see this so often,
Mm-hmm.
especially because if you've tried to reach a goal before in the past and you haven't been able to accomplish it, take the weight loss, right? It's an easy example. If you've tried to lose weight and maybe you've done it, but then you've regained it, there can be this sense of shame of, if I tell other people, they're going to see if I screw up and I quote fail again, which what is failure? I think we need to define what failure looks like for you and as it relates to a goal. If I tell somebody else and I make a mistake, or I quote fail, or life happens and things need to pivot, now I'm not only letting myself down, but I'm letting somebody else down. And I hear it so often when a client is starting with me, they're like, I'm scared to let you down, meaning me as their coach. And I'm like, wait, that's so interesting. Because in my eyes, you can't fail this. If you keep trying, that's a success. If you learn new skills, and if nothing else, by the end of our time together, you've learned a couple things and you've built some skills and you built some momentum, that's a success. I don't want individuals to fear telling other people because they're afraid to let themselves down. Think and believe that we need to be particular in who we tell
Mm-hmm.
and how we tell them. Because I want the people who know, if that goal scares you and the outcome scares you and you're a little bit nervous and you're a little unsure you can do it, or it's outside the norm for you, surround yourself with people who are there to champion you, who can believe in you when it feels hard, who can say like, hey, I know that you're working toward this goal and you're stumbling, but like, you got this, I think there's a difference between who you tell and who you surround yourself with, because you also don't want people to be like, just have the burger, like what's one day? There should be discernment.
Yeah, I think it's choosing your like social group is huge in that. And I've even had a conversation with someone before. It was more in relation to like hunting and preparing for that, like preparing for like a backcountry hunt and like the physicality of it, and like how fit you have to be for those kinds of things. And they were saying like, do you find yourself like maybe not cutting out friends, but just not hanging out with the friends as much who like deter you from your goals.
Yeah.
And yeah, 100%. And it sucks, but like I think if you truly want to be successful, and that's not to say that you won't still fail, but like maybe even if you are so afraid of failing, like to reduce your likelihood, like be around people who are A, encouraging failure as well, but B, who are going to help you support your goals. Like it's really hard to be around other people who maybe you want to cut out drinking, you want to cut out fast food, you want to cut out XYZ, but all of your friends are doing those things. That doesn't really match your goals. So now that doesn't mean finding new friends, but communicate your goals to them, like you said, kind of let them know, hey, I really want to lose some weight. I'm cutting out these things. Like, I'll still be around you guys, but just know, like, I'd really appreciate if you would support that. These aren't what I want to do, but it's hard because in this day and age, that's the fun thing, and everybody wants to do that. So everyone's like, yeah, let's drink, yeah, let's go eat all this, and I also think it's important to note that, like, and I'm sure you preach this as well, like, no food shaming when it comes to weight loss is bad. Right?
Yeah.
Want to eat the burger, but like when that is what you do every day, you kind of just have to make it known, like, hey, maybe today I had one yesterday, so I'm not gonna have another one today, kind of thing. But yeah, I definitely think choosing your social circle is huge, and meeting those goals as well.
And you touched on something super nuanced, to go back to the first question you asked, like, what are barriers that are keeping people back they're not even aware of? It's all these little nuances. It's the food FOMO. It's the guilt from other people. It's how do I express myself and set a boundary of like, hey, you guys might drink, but I'm not going to today because it's important to me. It's learning how to speak up for yourself and, hey, like this goal or me not drinking today, it's actually pretty vulnerable. I would really appreciate your support on this. Or like, hey, I'm actually not going to go today because I know that I have a big work project to do tomorrow. And the best thing for me is to get to bed early. But like, you guys go out and have a fun time, and you have to sit in that feeling of being uncomfortable. All of these factors are at play. And so when we think about the mental health aspect, like it's so deeply involved in all of it. I'm at the point now where I'm almost like, it's naive to think that it's not incorporated.
Yeah, I would agree. And you mentioned, yeah, like it takes being vulnerable to speak up, to create those boundaries, and vulnerability is wildly uncomfortable, uncomfortable. And if you don't like being uncomfortable, if you don't like pushing the limits of your comfort zone to express those vulnerabilities, it's hard. And I'm even going to tie this back into like kind of what we were talking about earlier. And I said I wanted to touch on like play and joy.
Yeah.
To be playful, to be joyful is vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable. You have to let your guards down to play, to be joyful, to have grace for things, to just experience life. Like that's in itself is a very vulnerable thing that people don't do. And which is sad, right? Because it's like you see little kids play and it's like, oh, they just don't know any better. They haven't been hurt yet. They haven't experienced things.
Yeah.
But we say that knowing like we could still be in that mindset. It's so funny. Like I met a couple of guys this weekend and they're like, you kind of remind me of a little kid, Whitney. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I'm not going to be this adult who's so serious about things, who's never playful, who's not a jokester. Like that's never going to be me. I want to be playful. I want to be that fun little person that everyone's around. And I hear that all the time. They're like, Whitney, you're like a little kid. Like you're an adult child. And not like in a mature way, right? It's like you just are literally doing whatever you want to do and experiencing life. And I love that. But yeah, I think like play is such a vulnerable thing, and people are so afraid to show that part of themselves and to let those guard down, even for themselves, which is kind of sad.
Yeah. So I moved from New Jersey to San Diego. It's been almost like a year and a half now. Yeah, so fun. And the one thing that I love most about living here is that people love to play. And they're just out like maximizing the area. So my hobby isn't hunting, but like you put me to water, it's like I want to go surf, I want to go skateboard, I want to, go hike, I want to go for a walk. You'll find me on the beach, all the things. And it's been so nourishing to meet people who are free-spirited in that way, of like giving me permission to play more and showing me that life can look different. I mean, from the East Coast, it's you live to work, and out here, it's like you live to play. You work to play. You work to live, so to say. And from that vulnerability piece, when I think about at the end of my life, like when I'm, 80 years old, 90 years old, sitting in the rocking chair, looking back, it's like, I want to know that I maximized my experience. And I personally think, I'm like, how sad to just be like working all the time and not taking time for yourself and not feeling good and not doing the things that bring you joy. And for me, even just thinking about joy or learning what brought me joy was a process in and of itself. I think we're all on this journey in different areas and facets.
Yeah. And yeah, kind of when I kind of experienced that like trajectory, we'll call it, that kind of changed just changed my ideal plan that I kind of had for myself. I think that is kind of what taught me the like idea of like play and joy. And I finally I had spent like, I was working like 50, 60 hour weeks, and I was like, oh, it's okay. I pride myself in that. Like, I love to work all the time. It's getting me towards my goals. It's sending me in the direction that I want to go. But I would get to like the weekends and would want to do something, but I was so tired from work all week that I had no energy to do things on the weekends. And, kind of like just change. I'm still doing the same things as far as like my job goes, but kind of took a different role where I have more time to do the things that I want to do. I have more flexibility. I have more autonomy. And then I started realizing like, this is way more enjoyable than working my life away and like not experiencing fun things. So I just really started to lean, and it was uncomfortable at first. Like, I had times where I was like, what do I do with my free time? And similar, like, I'm from Texas, and people there also just work all the time. There's not much to do outdoors in Texas, to be completely honest. So it seems like the fair thing to do. But then came out to Colorado, and same thing. Like, people are just, the number of people I've met who are, I don't want to say go-getters. That's not definitely in the frame of reference, but like, I've met people who were like, "Hey, let's go do this," and it's like on a whim. Like, I used to be a huge planner. Like, if I hadn't planned at least like 2 or 3 days in advance of something, I wasn't gonna do it.
Same.
Whereas now it's like, "Hey, let's go do this tonight or tomorrow," and I'm like, "Heck yeah, let's freaking go! Let's plan a trip this weekend and let's go." But that can be scary when you are someone who is a planner and you are someone who like has everything so set in stone and you're rigid and you follow this like set routine. And routine is good too, but like when it's so routine that you don't do fun things and play and enjoy life, it's really taking away. Like, I was like, oh my God, I lived all of my 20s like working my 20s away and I've not done anything fun. Like, I need to do fun things.
Yeah. Which is also stress.
Yeah.
Circle all of this back to where we started.
Oh, it really is. Like, yeah, it doesn't seem like it would be stressful to like move to that, but yeah, the amount of anxiety experienced of like, "Oh, I need to do fun things."
Even just trying to, what's that?
You wouldn't think that, but it's just like the mindset shift change. Like, I kind of had to sit in that moment of like, I've got to change my mindset.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up energy, because for me, play and joy gives me energy. And so often, one of the challenges we have, just like you mentioned, is by the end of the week or by the end of the day, we are so tired because we've been giving to so many other people and pouring into everybody else's cup. Or from the wellness perspective, doing more. We're over exercising. We're under eating. It's all more. It's all more. It's all more. And our energy cup and our energy tank is so utterly depleted that we have trouble physically showing up and doing the thing. And then we shame ourselves because we can't do the thing, but you're so tired, it makes sense. So what if we start to change the narrative of like, what are the things that are going to give me energy so that I have the cup filled to go do the things? And that's where the wellness routine
that's something that's so important to me, is like preaching to people like the quintessential like fill or cliche, fill your cup.
Yeah.
But it's so true. Like, fill your cup with things that you enjoy. And I'm someone like, I've kind of always put others before myself. And not that that's a bad thing, but I would do it like not in such a great way. Like, I was depleting myself trying to put others first, and like now I'm to a place where I can put others first because I have put myself first as well. Whereas in the past that was never the case. But to your point of like people who are just always doing more and more and more, like that's a big thing that I see working with like the tactical population, military, police, fire, is that especially in their training, like it's almost never how hard can I push you in your training? It is how much can I dial you back? Because you're doing way too much and you're burning yourself out. And on top of all of the work that you're doing, you're pushing yourself beyond, which pushing yourself beyond your limits in your training is okay. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not. And I think that you should push your limits from time to time. But when you're pushing your limits every single day, day in and day out, you are really tearing your body down more than, especially when you bring in all of these other stressors, right? If you had no stress except for your training, you could probably push your limits every single day, and that's okay. But when you bring in the stress of like the jobs that these people have tied in with them physically exhausting themselves day in and day out in their training, And now how can we dial that back so that when you go home and then you hear how it's causing family problems, like, oh, when I go home at the end of the day, why, like, I just don't have the energy to be with my kids and my wife complains to me about it and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I get that. I hear that and I understand it. And, maybe let's just dial it back a little bit so you have some energy when you get home. And that
Yeah.
concept is always so hard for them to grasp.
Yeah. And how brave
Yeah.
to step back and say, you know what, I'm willing to slow down a little bit. What you're asking me to do is not the common choice or the known choice. And so I don't necessarily know if it's going to work, but I trust you and your insight. So I'm going to try it, even if I get pushback, until we can see the outcome and the benefit from it. I find that decision is brave. I want to champion people who are like, other people aren't doing this. But if what I'm doing isn't working, then I'm going to try something different. And I think of it like a throttle on a boat. I sail, I'm on boats all the time. Like, just pull the throttle back. Let's find our feet. Because when we're constantly going at 100 miles an hour, it's reckless. We can't control it. It's all this energy that's sporadic. But if we slow down and we're intentional, the outcome will be, again, more in our control.
I love that you use the word brave for that because, yes, I could not agree more. And I think so often we see brave as like this big heroic act of like, a firefighter walks into a burning building, that's brave, or like someone saves a life, that's brave, or just, this huge thing. But it is how brave of you to slow down, how brave of you to take a moment for yourself and relax when that's wildly uncomfortable for you. How brave of you to slow down, to have a conversation with someone that maybe you're avoiding. Like those small things, I think, truthfully, are our biggest acts of courage and bravery. But we don't see it as that way because, oh, that's scary and that makes me, for a man, less masculine, or like for a woman, that makes me weak and shows people that like I can't do what I need to do. But no, how brave of you to do those things.
Yeah, I love that. Brave to say no and take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too. Yeah, that's a big thing that I see too, is especially in the population that I work with and kind of to what I was talking about, they do their jobs because they want to help others, right? Like you're a police officer, you're a firefighter, you're in the military because you want to put the country first. You're doing all those other things because truly you care for others and want to put others first. But when your job literally is to care for others and put others first, and like yes, maybe for your job you do for a moment have to put yourself last, but we see so often these people who do the full 20 years and end up retiring after these jobs. It's very common that 2 to 3 years later they have a heart attack and they die, or there's some fatal incident that is related to their health where they pass. And it's like, you spent 20 years exhausting yourself to not live a life after that, which is so sad. And like, I hate that that's a statistic, but it's real. Sure. So how can we preach to them? Like, kind of my thoughts with who I work with is like, how can I preach to you to take those step backs and have you understand that, that is brave. That is an act of courage to put yourself first, to slow down. Because, and I like to be blunt about it. Like, I kind of say exactly what I said. Like, hey, at the rate that you're going, if you do this for 10, 15, 20 more years, you will not live to see many more days when you retire. And I hate being that blunt about it, but with that population, you kind of have to be.
I was going to say, I feel like they respect it.
And from there, it's just like a slow peel back to getting them to slow down. But usually until I put it that way, I see nothing from them, and it's a go, 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 go,
sure.
Until I put it that way.
Sure. I would hate for it to take an event for someone to finally learn to accept it. Unfortunately, I find sometimes it does. An injury, an event, some pivotal shift. But even conversations like that can hopefully future cast it so it doesn't take that long. So that we're not getting the burnout, the injury, to finally value rest in the same way that we value work.
Yeah, and I think until my mindset is always, if I'm working, I've always kind of worked in like larger group settings. If I can get just one person in that to to buy into, yeah, I need more rest. I need to take a step back. I need to take better care of myself. If I can just get one person, and then that kind of spreads, right? If they see the effect that it ends up having on that one person, they're going to be like, hey, dude, like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
I want to be relaxed like that. And, or they maybe like, I use an example like in a military setting, they go to another unit or they meet other people or there's new people coming in and like they're able to talk to them about it. And one can hope it just spreads like wildfire. So if there's just one person in a large group that kind of leans into that and really takes on to that, I think that can have a larger effect than really trying to like push it on the masses, because at least in my experience, like hoping and praying that the whole group buys into it stresses me out more than it stresses them out. But oftentimes when you see it play out, for me anyways, it's like, wow, that was so cool to like, I know however long ago I had that conversation with that person and now I'm seeing the results of that, and they're always so much better off. There's not like 10 out of 10 times. There's never been a time where somebody listened and there wasn't a benefit at the end.
I imagine too, it's an identity. Like, I am a hard worker, so I will not rest. And then trying to handle that identity piece is a whole different layer to this.
I would agree, and I think that's something I've struggled with in the past too. Like I said, when I was working all of the time and thought that was going to get me to my goals, whether it was faster or whatever, it's like, I am a hard worker and I want people to see that. And I think there's nothing wrong with being prideful in that, but also I had to learn to balance. Like, I'm still a hard worker, but I can be more efficient, I guess, in my work and be a hard worker because I play, because I have fun, because I experience joy, because I do these other things. Versus before, it was I'm a hard worker, I'm work, all work, no play, to the point where I'm exhausted and I can't do anything else.
Yeah. I was thinking about this recently. It's the traits that got you here are amazing. They allow you to achieve the accolades. They allow you to accomplish the goals. They allow you to do the things, but what got you here won't get you there. And so it's reaching the point that you're willing to say, okay, thanks for serving me work ethic. Thanks for serving me drive. Thanks for serving me ambition. How can I harness it and optimize it to get to the next stage so that when I leave the career, when I forgo the position, when I make the shift, when life changes or whatever that looks like, I'm able to navigate that with skills that are going to then serve me for the next decade or whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And that's even like all things in life, right? Like, you can't, oftentimes when you do one thing one way forever, you find out over time there's other ways to do it and there's more efficient ways to do it. But then if you're one of those people who is like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and you keep doing it the same way, eventually you're going to get surpassed, right? Like, whether that's
it might break.
You might break it, and your way is not maybe the best way anymore. So taking that mindset, and I think a lot of people recognize that, so taking that mindset and applying it to life, that the way you've been living life this entire time can shift, and we can experience it differently, and we can change our mindset around things. I think that's another uncomfortable thing, just changing that mindset towards things is what a lot of people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Which is, I don't know, and maybe curious on like experience you've had with your clients, like, and I guess maybe this kind of maybe goes back to the first question of like barriers or whatnot, but like, what have you found to be the biggest discomfort and maybe someone who is that like afraid of change?
If I think about the phase 1 versus phase 2, phase 1 being like, I want to lose the weight and I want to feel comfortable in my skin. Neither is right or wrong. It's just different levels, different challenges. The way that I approach health and fitness and the way that I approach weight loss in of itself is so different than anything they've tried before. That resistance comes from like I've done all the things and it hasn't really worked. And I'm almost at the point where I feel like I failed everything and there's nowhere else out but to try something so drastically different that they're kind of at the point where like, I got to do something. So I don't even care what it is, just help. Which I simultaneously don't enjoy that that's where they've gotten to. And I'm like, and now they're ready, like, let's go.
To get to that point of like, I'm so far in the deep end that now I need to make a change.
Yeah, I always say what I do is not groundbreaking. The way I go about it is different. And that's what helps them be successful. I think it's an openness that they need to have, that getting healthy doesn't look like starving themselves, exercising to oblivion, going all in, changing every habit at once. So the biggest challenge they have and change is being open to doing things differently, because different doesn't mean wrong. It's just different. When they get to phase 2, the change for them is slowing down and learning how to say no and really rooting in who they are. It's setting the boundaries at work. It's saying, you know what, I'm not going to work through my lunch break. I'm going to take my work. It's saying, I'm going to clock out at 5. It's, hey, I'm not going to go to the bar with you or the winery with you this weekend. Or actually, I'm not going to drink, but you guys do it. It's getting really rooted in what helps them feel best, which I love too. They're both so valuable, but they're both so different. And watching someone go from the standpoint of, I'm so scared to make a change, I'm not even sure that this is possible, to like, that makes sense from the science perspective. I can trust this, to start to build the belief in themselves, the consistency in the results, and now being like, oh my gosh, it's working. How can I optimize this? The growth over the period of time is one of the most beautiful and fun things for me to watch.
Yeah, I love that. And you kind of, something I was going to mention earlier and kind of in line with that is like, I think once people see that change and that change kind of, a positive change becomes addicting, but also like that plays into, especially for women, like I get asked all the time, like no like specific way of wording it, but it's usually something along the lines of like, how are you like, or what makes you feel confident or like capable or whatever. And honestly, I like to say that like being in the weight room, training, being fit, whatever, like when you start to see you're getting stronger or you can lift more weight or you can run faster or whatever, that begins to play into all other aspects of my life. I begin to feel stronger and more capable in all other aspects of my life. So for example, if I want to go like climb a 14er, like a large mountain, I'm like, well, I did this on the gym the other day, so that's going to be nothing. Or like I got to help someone like pack out an elk or something like that. I'm like, well, I can do this in the gym, so like of course I'm capable of doing that. It plays into so many aspects of your life, and that's one thing that I really like to like help people with too, is, you know, if you can just like the role that training and being physically active plays and everything that you do is unmatched. So not even do you have to be physically active just to lose weight. Like, be physically, maybe weight loss isn't your goal, right? Maybe you are like a string bean and you're really skinny and you're like, I don't need to work out because I'm skinny, but like still be physically active. And that can look different for anyone. It doesn't, like I said, your goal doesn't have to be weight loss, but that has an effect on your brain, which then plays in, like I said, to all other aspects of your life. And I don't think people recognize that either.
Yeah, it's weight loss is such a common goal for women, but it's not about the weight. It's like, I want to be able to wake up and walk into a room and feel like I am who I am in my skin and look in the mirror and recognize that. What they really crave is being strong. And I love that you touch on that because it excites me so much. I like to think of training and all of this as, we're just putting you in this training center. Go into the gym, like lift really heavy things and do that one extra burpee when you think that you can't, or pick up the dumbbell that scares you a little bit. Because if you can do the thing that scares you in the gym, or show yourself that you can when you're in the moment and life is feeling really heavy, you've built the fortitude and you've built the resiliency. And if you stumble, you can get back up because you've developed the practice focused mindset and you're starting to champion yourself of like, I could do more than I could do yesterday. That's my favorite thing about fitness, is it's this vehicle. It's this tangible thing that you can access on a regular basis to show you just how strong that you can be. And if you want to lose weight and a couple pounds in the process, by all means, if that will help you feel comfortable and confident and strong, by all means. I can't stand the body positivity movement when they say love and accept yourself in all seasons. If being at a heavier weight is not only making you unhealthy, but deeply uncomfortable in who you are, you should not feel guilty for having to lose weight. And also you don't need to. And I think it gets to be both.
Yeah, I love that a lot. Yeah, there's so many, one of my favorite phrases is like, do it scared. Like you said, you mentioned, like pick up the weight that scares you. And like, if we don't thrust ourselves into these moments or these experiences or these things that scare us, like we're never going to grow from that. But yeah, I think that's something that I really love. We are kind of coming up on the end here, and I think you'll probably have a great answer to this based on our conversation. But how I end all of my episodes is I ask my guest, what does wild strength mean to you. And you can interpret that however you want to. I get a variety of answers, but Shannon, what does wild strength mean to you?
Oh, I'm glad that I didn't think about this ahead of time because I think it changed based on our conversation. But I
For
think
sure.
it's the bravery
Mm.
to go against the norm if the norm hasn't worked. And if the norm isn't what serves you, it's the bravery to say, I'm willing to walk the uncharted path or go into the unknown or do the thing that's uncommon or do it scared and see what the outcome is willing to be.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that's, like I said, as soon as we got to talking, I was like, I'm already thinking in advance just the perfect answer for this. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming. If anyone wants to talk to you, if they want to reach out, how can they find you?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Whitney. This has been a blast. Come hang out over with me on Instagram. My handle's at Shannon Buruchian. Maybe we can spell it because my name's pretty long. But I'm always sharing tips on health and wellness for women. Men, can benefit from it as well. Self-care practices. I have a ton of free resources over there. I have a brand new free training that we put all about 5 unconventional ways to enhance and boost your metabolism. You can get that link in my bio or just send me a DM and just come say hi. I love getting to know you. I want to hear your big takeaway from the podcast.